I used to tell myself I was visiting for my best friend, until his mother looked at me one night, her voice barely above a whisper, and said, "You're not here for him anymore, are you?" That was the moment I stopped lying to her and to myself. I hadn't planned on noticing her. I really hadn't. I was just there to see my friend, the same way I'd done 100 times before. But that afternoon, the moment his mother opened the door, something in the air shifted, quietly, silently, like a page being turned before I was ready. She stood there in a soft, cream-colored sweater, her hair loose, falling around her shoulders in waves that looked effortlessly graceful. There was nothing dramatic about her entrance. No slow motion, no cinematic music, just a warm, confident woman welcoming me inside. But her eyes, I remember those first. Calm, brown, steady, eyes that notice things. "Come in, he'll be down in a minute," she said, stepping aside with a small, polite smile. Her voice was gentle, low, warm, and unhurried, like she had all the time in the world. I murmured a thanks and walked in, pretending to look around casually, pretending I wasn't suddenly aware of every detail. The faint vanilla scent in the hallway, the soft rhythm of her footsteps behind me, the delicate sound of her bracelets brushing against her wrist as she moved. While she busied herself in the kitchen, I sat in the living room, waiting, doing absolutely nothing, and yet my heartbeat was annoyingly present. I heard the soft clink of porcelain, the swirl of a spoon against a cup, and then she appeared again, offering tea. "Here," she said, holding the cup out with a light touch on my shoulder to get my attention. It was such a simple touch, barely there, barely a moment. Her hand rested just long enough to guide me to the cup, and then it was gone. But the warmth of it stayed, spreading across my shoulder and down my arm like my body was determined to remember it. She sat across from me, legs crossed, posture relaxed, eyes curious in a quiet, composed way. She asked how I'd been, how work was, how life was going, and there was something different about the way she asked. People usually ask out of politeness. She asked like she actually wanted to hear the answer. I found myself talking more than I expected. Not deeply, not personally, just comfortably. And all the while, her attention never drifted, never rushed. She listened with her full presence, the kind that makes you feel seen rather than scanned. Then my friend finally hurried downstairs, apologizing for the delay, pulling me out of the moment. I laughed it off, but when I stood to greet him, I caught her watching me. Not in a bold or inappropriate way, in a knowing way, a way that made something inside my chest tighten, then flutter, then question what that feeling even was. Before she left the room, she offered one last small smile, gentle, unreadable, and unforgettable. And that was the moment I realized this visit felt different. She had noticed me, and I had noticed her back, more than I should have. I told myself it was just another visit, just another casual drop-by to hang out, laugh, waste time, and escape from the noise of everything else. But as I walked up their familiar driveway a few days later, I caught myself doing something I had never done before. I slowed down, adjusting my shirt, fixing my hair in the side mirror of a parked car. I actually stopped and laughed under my breath. "What are you doing, man?" I shook my head and rang the bell. This time, she opened the door with a soft, amused expression, as if she already knew I was there before I even knocked. Her hair was tied loosely today, a few strands framing her face, and she wore a deep green blouse that brought out the warmth in her eyes. "He'll be with you in a minute," she said again, stepping aside. Same words as before, but somehow they landed differently now. Softer, closer. I stepped in, and instead of waiting in the living room, I found my attention drifting toward the kitchen. I didn't mean to. My feet just carried me. She glanced back at me over her shoulder, an eyebrow raised, a playful hint in her voice. "Waiting in here instead?" I felt caught like a kid sneaking cookies before dinner. "It's just closer to the tea," I joked lamely. She smiled and shook her head, setting 2 cups on the counter. For a few minutes, it was just the two of us in that warm little kitchen. She moved gracefully without hurry, and I found myself watching the small details. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear, how her sleeves slid to her elbows when she reached up, how her voice lowered slightly when she spoke in quieter spaces. We stood close enough that when we both reached for a jar of sugar, our fingers touched. Not brushed, rested. For one slow second too long. I felt a spark run through me, quick and undeniable. She didn't pull away immediately. Instead, she looked at me, really looked. Calm, steady, thoughtful. There wasn't panic in her eyes. No fluster. Just awareness. And something I couldn't name yet. You seem different today, she said lightly, stirring her tea. I swallowed. Maybe I'm just in a better mood. Mhm, she murmured, unconvinced but smiling. My friend eventually thundered down the stairs, loud and chaotic as always, and the spell broke. We carried our cups to the living room, but I couldn't stop replaying that moment in the kitchen. The touch, the look, the impossibly calm way she could disarm me with one glance. Hours later, after I left, I realized something that bothered me more than it should have. I wasn't thinking about the conversations I'd had with my friend. I was thinking about her, the way she listened, the warmth in her eyes, the softness of her voice, the feeling of her hand, brief but unforgettable. And suddenly, an uncomfortable truth formed in my chest. I wasn't just visiting that house for him anymore. I was waiting, hoping, listening for her. I arrived later than usual that evening. The house was quiet, except for a soft instrumental track playing somewhere in the living room. My friend was upstairs, busy with something he claimed would take just 5 minutes. Those 5 minutes became 20, then 30, and eventually I stopped pretending to scroll my phone and let myself look around. She walked in with a folded blanket in her arms, surprised to still see me alone. He's not done yet, she asked, lifting an eyebrow with amused disbelief. I shook my head. Apparently, 5 minutes has a different meaning in his dictionary. She chuckled under her breath, the kind of laugh that felt warm just to hear. Well, I guess I should keep you company then. She sat at the far end of the sofa, leaving a space between us, not far, not close. Just enough to give us room to breathe, but not enough to feel distant. The lamp beside her cast a soft amber glow across her face, highlighting the elegance in her features. Mature, composed, quietly beautiful in a way youth can't imitate. What's been on your mind lately? She asked, her voice calm, inviting, almost therapeutic. I hesitated at first. There was something about her presence that made honesty feel easier, even when I wasn't sure I wanted to be honest. So I found myself talking about feeling stuck, about expectations, about the silent pressure of trying to figure life out. I didn't go into dramatic detail, but I said enough that she could sense the weight behind my words. She listened, not with polite nods, not with distracted agreement, but with full attention. Her eyes stayed on me, steady and focused, as if nothing else existed in that moment. When I paused, she didn't rush to respond. She let silence rest between us, comfortably, not awkwardly, before she finally spoke. You're harder on yourself than you realize, she said softly. You carry burdens you don't need to carry alone. Her words landed deeper than she could have known. The way she said them, grounded, sure, almost protective, made something in my chest loosen, like a knot slowly untangling. Life doesn't come with a perfect map, she continued. It's okay to be uncertain. It's okay to want more. I didn't know what to say. I just looked at her, and she looked back, and for a moment neither of us blinked. The space between us felt smaller than before. Not physically, emotionally. Then she shifted slightly, angling her knees toward me. The movement brought her closer, just enough that I could feel the warmth of her presence through the quiet air. You're seen, she added gently, even when you think you're not. That was the moment I realized she understood me in a way most people never tried to. She wasn't just hearing me, she was reading me, seeing the worry beneath the words, the longing beneath the silence. My friend eventually barged in, loud as ever, and the moment dissolved, but the feeling remained. And as I glanced at her one last time, I could tell from her eyes that she knew. She saw me, and I wasn't sure I wanted to hide anymore. Over the next few days, I tried to create distance. At least, that's what I told myself I was doing. I ignored messages from my friend, stayed late at work, filled my evenings with pointless tasks just to avoid driving over there. But avoidance is a strange thing. The harder I try not to think about her, the more present she became in my mind. Her voice, her calm eyes, the way she listened like she could see straight through the noise in my head. Each memory surfaced uninvited, slipping in during quiet moments, stealing my focus, steady as breath and twice as relentless. Finally, I caved and went again. The house looked the same, but stepping inside felt different now, like I had crossed some invisible line in myself. I wasn't just visiting. I was wanting. My friend rushed upstairs to grab something, leaving me alone in the hallway. That's when she appeared from the living room, holding a stack of folded laundry. She paused when she saw me, just a second too long for it to be casual. Then she smiled, but it wasn't light and playful like before. It was knowing. "You disappeared," she said plainly, walking closer. "I've been busy," I replied, forcing a casual tone. She set the laundry down on a nearby table and leaned against it, folding her arms, not in a defensive way, but in a way that said she wasn't going to accept a half answer. "You don't have to lie," she said softly. The words hit harder than they should have. I breathed in slowly and glanced away. I just needed some space to think. "About what?" she asked. Her voice wasn't sharp, just honest, patient. And then, like she always did, she stepped closer, closing some of the distance between us. Not recklessly, not dramatically, just enough that I could feel her presence again. My heartbeat stuttered. "I don't want to make things complicated," I admitted quietly. She studied my face for a moment, searching. For what? I didn't know. But whatever she found made her expression soften. "Complicated doesn't always mean wrong," she said. "But hiding from something doesn't make it disappear either." I swallowed, unsure what to do with the truth sitting between us. The silence that followed was thick, charged, heavy, impossible to ignore. I turned slightly, intending to step back, to retreat before I said something I couldn't take back. But before I could move, her hand reached out, fingers circling lightly around my wrist. It was such a gentle touch, barely there, but stopped me completely. I looked down at her hand, then up into her eyes. There was honesty in them, and conflict, and something warmer woven beneath the surface, something she wasn't saying but didn't have to. "You don't have to run," she whispered. The sound of footsteps upstairs broke the moment, snapping us back to reality. She released my wrist slowly, letting her hand fall away, though I could still feel the imprint of her touch like it had branded me. I stepped back, and she stepped away too, both of us pretending nothing had happened. But everything had, and I knew, with a sinking certainty, that I was already in too deep to go back. It was late when I arrived that night, later than I ever usually would. I told myself I was just stopping by because I was in the area, but even I didn't believe that excuse. My friend wasn't home. His car wasn't in the driveway, and the house was quiet except for a soft glow coming from the living room window. I almost turned back. Almost. But then the front door opened before I could step away. She stood there in a loose cardigan, her hair down, eyes a shade softer in the warm light behind her. "You're out late," she said, her voice calm, but carrying an undercurrent I couldn't read. "I just needed air," I replied. It wasn't a lie, just not the whole truth. She held the door open for me. "Come in." The house felt different at night. Warmer, dimmer, more intimate. No background noise, no footsteps upstairs, no distractions. Just quiet. When I stepped into the living room, she switched off the TV and sat on the couch, her legs tucked to the side, waiting for me to speak. But I didn't know where to begin. "You've been distant, then suddenly here," she said softly, folding her hands in her lap. "What is it you're running from? Or, who is it you're running to?" The question pulled me down onto the sofa beside her, closer than I probably should have sat. Our shoulders didn't touch, but the space was thin. Thin enough that one breath, one shift, one moment could change everything. I exhaled slowly. "I don't know how to explain it." "You don't have to rush," she replied. "Just be honest." Her voice was steady, but her eyes flickered, like she already knew and was bracing herself for the answer. For a long moment, neither of us said a word. The silence wasn't empty. It was dense, alive, charged with all the things we hadn't dared to admit. My hand rested on the cushion between us, and hers was only inches away. The temptation to close that distance was almost unbearable. Finally, she leaned in, not touching me, but close enough that I could feel her breath against my cheek. Close enough that my heartbeat betrayed me. Her voice dropped to a whisper, steady and devastatingly certain. "You're not here for him anymore, are you?" The room seemed to still. Time seemed to still. Everything in me clenched at once. Relief, fear, longing, truth, all colliding in a single heartbeat. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I couldn't. She searched my face, eyes soft but unflinching, reading the answer I didn't give out loud. My silence was louder than any confession. Her expression changed just slightly. Not shock, not anger, something far more vulnerable, as if she had been waiting to hear this truth and dreading it at the same time. She looked down, inhaled once, then met my eyes again. "I thought so," she whispered. I wanted to say her name. I wanted to tell her everything. But the words stayed trapped in my chest as we sat there, too close to deny, too scared to cross the line. And in that moment, everything between us was undeniable. For a long moment after her question, neither of us moved. The house felt too quiet, like even the walls were holding their breath. I finally looked away, not because I wanted to, but because the intensity in her eyes was too much. It was the look of someone who already knew the truth, someone who had known it before I even admitted it to myself. "I shouldn't have said that," she whispered, pulling her cardigan a little tighter around her. "It wasn't fair. You only said what I was too afraid to." I replied, my voice low, unsteady. She closed her eyes briefly, as if the honesty between us had weight to it. Heavy, real, irreversible. When she opened them again, there was no pretense left. No polite distance. No carefully drawn lines. Just vulnerability. "You're younger," she said quietly, "and I'm supposed to be the one who has everything under control. I should have stopped this the moment I felt it happening." The moment she felt it happening. That sentence alone changed everything. "What did you feel?" I asked, needing the words, needing confirmation I wasn't imagining this connection. She allowed a slow breath. "Seen. Alive. Wanted." And that scared me more than I expected. She stood up, maybe to break the moment, maybe to save herself from it. But when she took a step away, something in me reacted before my mind could catch up. I rose, closing the space between us, not touching her, just standing close enough that she could feel I wasn't backing away anymore. "You don't have to keep pretending," I said gently. "Not with me." Her eyes lifted to mine, and for once, she didn't look composed or guarded. She looked human, achingly human, and it was that honesty, not her beauty, that completely disarmed me. "I don't want to ruin anything," she murmured. "Not your friendship, not your peace, not your future. I don't want to be a mistake you look back on." "You could never be a mistake," I said. "Not to me." Her breath trembled. She looked torn, caught between logic and feeling, between caution and desire. For a moment, she turned her face slightly away, like she was fighting herself. Then, almost helplessly, she spoke the truth she'd been holding back. "I don't want you to go." Those 5 words hit deeper than any confession. Slowly, cautiously, she reached out, not for my hand, not for a kiss, but just to rest her palm against my chest, right over my heartbeat. Her fingers spread there, light but steady, as if grounding herself in the reality of me. I covered her hand with mine, letting my thumb brush gently over her knuckles. "No ruse, no urgency," just honesty and closeness, finally unhidden. She stepped into me, resting her forehead against mine, her eyes closed. Our breaths mingled in the small space between us. No words, no fear, just a quiet understanding that after all the hesitation, the pretending, the distance in return, we were here, together. The night she finally tells him everything is silent, raw, and stripped of all pretenses. No teasing smiles, no guarded pauses, no careful distance. It happens in the living room, after his friend has gone to sleep, when the house is wrapped in shadows and the only light comes from a single warm lamp. She sits across from him, posture steady but eyes faintly trembling, as if bracing for a storm she has spent years running from. She begins slowly, not with confessions of love, but with the truth of her scars, the betrayal from her marriage, the years of loneliness, the walls she built, the guilt she carries, and the fear of being judged for wanting something she knows the world won't understand. She admits that she noticed his presence long before he noticed the meaning of his own feelings. She confesses that every time she tried to push him away, it wasn't because she didn't feel something, it was because she did. And that terrified her. Her voice cracks once, when she finally asks the question she's been holding inside. If you choose me, you choose a story that won't be easy. Are you sure you know what that means? This is the emotional peak of the entire journey. Her vulnerability, his clarity, and the choice that will define them both. He doesn't answer right away. He walks to the window, collecting his thoughts. He remembers the beginning, how she intimidated him, how she surprised him, how she softened him, and how she saw him long before he saw himself. He remembers every lesson she unknowingly taught him. Patience, self-awareness, steadiness, and what it feels like to be truly noticed. When he turns back, his expression is certain. He tells her he isn't choosing her because she needs saving or because she filled an empty space in his life. He is choosing her because she is the first person who made him feel alive, present, and seen without performing or pretending. He tells her he knows the world might never approve, but the world won't live his life for him. He will. She looks at him for a long time, searching his face for doubt. Instead, she finds a steadiness she never expected from someone younger. That's when the last of her resistance breaks. They don't rush into a dramatic embrace. Instead, she reaches for his hand, a simple gesture, but overflowing with meaning. It is an agreement, a choice, a beginning that comes after a long, necessary fight with their own fears. The chapter closes on a quiet but powerful note, not a fairy tale ending, but a mature promise. Two people choosing each other, fully aware of the risks, yet willing to face them. Because in the end, this wasn't a story about a forbidden romance. It was about two souls who found something rare, tested it against their fears, and decided it was worth holding on to.